Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. I just finished writing a story, 550-word story, of the soldier pictured here. He's First Lieutenant Oliver C. Ayers of the 39th Iowa Infantry. The photograph is new to my collection. I purchased it last week at the Ohio Civil War Collector Show, and it came with a bunch of research that had been done by Scott Vizot, who assembled the information. Scott is a wonderful dealer who sets up at the Ohio show and elsewhere. I was really intrigued by this image because it shows an officer in profile. And for those of you who are students of the Civil War and collectors of portrait photography, profile images are pretty rare, and a profile in full standing view is quite unusual. So I added it to my collection, and to add to my interest and my research challenge, he was identified. The paperwork I received helped me to get a jump start, and that led to the story that I just submitted to Vicki Miner. Vicki is the managing editor of the Winterset Madisonian. That's a newspaper in Winterset, Iowa. Now, you may wonder, why did I come to write a story so quickly for a newspaper in Iowa? Well, let me tell you the story. And to tell the story, I want to take you back to the battle in North Georgia that cost Lieutenant Ayers his life. So going back to October 5th of 1864, in Allatoona Pass, which was a strategic railroad junction in North Georgia, the 39th and other regiments under the command of Brigadier General John Corse were defending the pass. Confederates were coming in their direction. The 39th Iowa arrived about 1 o'clock in the morning on the 5th, took up some positions around daybreak, around 280 men strong. They formed a line of battle, and they moved out in advance of the main line. And the main line was in front of these two forts that were commanding and guarding the pass. And the pass was in a perilous situation with an entire division of Confederates bearing down on it. So Ayers is one of the officers. He had enlisted 2 years before. Originally from New York State, he settled in Iowa in the town of Winterset. There's the connection to the Madisonian. And the connection gets even better. He and his brother, Elias, had started a dry goods store, joined a local band. Oliver Ayers was a clarinetist. His brother, Elias, was the band leader. So they were having some fun in town between the dry goods business and making music. But Ayers had also become the editor and publisher of the Madisonian. So a direct connection to a newspaper that is still in existence today. Ayers was not the original owner, but he was one of the earliest owners of this newspaper that was founded in 1856. So in 1862, he leaves behind the newspaper, the town of Winterset, and enlists in the 39th, sent to Mississippi, Tennessee. In Mississippi, he winds up in Corinth, and in Corinth, he poses for this photograph. Flash forward to 1864, after the Atlantic campaign, the beginning of the Nashville campaign. That's when the Confederate division was bearing down on Allatoona Pass, and Brigadier General Corse is getting his men set up. Early in the morning, the Confederate General Samuel French sends a note to Corse, one of the classic surrender notes. I want to avoid the useless effusion of blood. So, General Corse, why don't you surrender your command? And Corse, of course, politely declines. 9 o'clock, 45 minutes after the note, the surrender note is sent, the battle opens. The 39th is out in front of the two forts, aligned in sort of a little valley, a little low area, and then a rise on a hill. The Confederates slam into them with everything they have. Murderous fire ensues. Of the 280 men, those 280 Iowans that were there, 157 become casualties. That's more than 50%. 33 of the men are killed outright, and one of them is Ayers. According to a note in his military service record, this is the description of what happened. A musket ball passing through the body, dying instantly, falling on one knee, his face toward the enemy. Really brought this image home to me, because here we see him full standing, and the vision of him receiving a death wound in the body, I assume that means the upper body, and falling down on one knee and then falling down his face to the enemy. The 39th faces pretty severe losses, such a high rate. Not only that, they lost their colors, but not before every man, all 9 men in the color guard, were wounded or injured before the colors fell into Confederate hands. This is really a tragic loss for the 39th. For Brigadier General Corse and the rest of the men, the Union forces, well, they ultimately repelled the Confederate division. They won the day. Corse himself received an ugly, disfiguring wound in the face, lived to tell the whole story. And Corse, in his after-action report, he mentions Ayers by name. He also mentions 2 other officers in the 39th, Captain Andrew T. Blodgett and the Lieutenant Colonel Redfield. And I want to read this quote to you by Brigadier General Corse. It's his way of paying tribute to these Iowans who were out front, took the brunt of this horrible attack. So here's the quote. "The gallant dead, whose loss conveys grief to so many households, have left an imperishable memory, and the names of Redfield, Blodgett, and Ayers must prove as immortal as the holy cause for which they sacrificed their lives." By this time, of course, Ayers had been buried. According to my research, he was first buried on or very near the battlefield. His remains were later removed to nearby Cartersville. And at some point, they were moved to the National Cemetery at Marietta, Georgia. There's a stone. You'll see a white stone there, O.C. Ayers, it says on it. All the way back up north in Tompkins County, New York, in the town of Trumansburg, a little cemetery called Grove Cemetery, you'll also find another marker. It's a cenotaph. His remains aren't there, but the family erected a cenotaph in his memory, and it notes his death at Allatoona Pass. How do I know a lot of this information? Well, I found a transcript of Ayers' journal kept between August of 1862 and May of 1864, just a few months before his death in battle. The name of this transcribed journal is called "Soldiering is No Child's Play." It's a quote from the transcription. And it was put together by Dale Snare. Dale is a subscriber to Military Images magazine, of which I'm the editor and publisher. So it's been a really interesting research that has really spread over the course of a couple of days. And there's one other note that I want to share with you. During my research, I discovered that Ayers' birthday was October 6th. He would have been 30 years old on October 6th, 1864. He didn't live to see it. He died at age 29, never married. So there you have it. Today's Life on the Civil War Research Trail. We'll see you next time.